If you listen to this show with any kind of consistency, and I'm very grateful to you if you do, you know I've said over and over and over again all these many months, please, Republican candidates, don't bash other Republican candidates. We don't need to do that. We'll win by debating issues, by letting the candidates present their various ideologies, their positions on issues, how they would lead this country, how they would govern. But please don't attack other Republican candidates. There's no need for that. It makes us look completely disjointed and that there's a conflict that's unnecessary. Well, I couldn't believe my ears. There is one Republican presidential candidate who seems to be absolutely committed to that premise. Here's Senator Ted Cruz yesterday on Fox News Channel.
I salute Donald Trump for focusing on the need to address illegal immigration. The Washington cartel doesn't want to address that. He has a colorful way of speaking. It's not the way I speak, but I'm not going to engage in the media's game of throwing rocks and attacking other Republicans. I'm just not going to do it.
Wow. I listen, if there's any reason why I'm grateful to welcome Senator Ted Cruz to the Mike Gallagher Show, it's to personally thank you for following what I think the American people believe, Senator Cruz, and that is there's no need for Republicans to bash other Republicans unnecessarily. So thank you, Senator Cruz, for your position.
Well, Mike, my friend, thank you very much. It is great to be with you, and I think you're exactly right. I think the American people want leaders who focus on the issues that matter, who focus on the challenges to this country, on the assaults on our Constitution, on the assaults on our liberty, on the diminishing role of America in the world, and the threats to our safety and security. And with respect to Donald Trump, it's been unfortunate to see other Republicans taking shots at him. He is focusing on an incredibly important issue, which is illegal immigration and the threat it poses to our nation. It's a threat it poses to rule of law. That is a good thing that he is focusing on that issue. A lot more candidates should be focusing on that issue.
And you very artfully say he speaks in a colorful manner. Obviously, the wording probably, I guess, it's fair to say I'm sure he would have perhaps liked to have presented the way he said it a little differently. But I also don't believe that Donald Trump was saying all Mexicans are rapists or all Mexicans are killers. He wasn't saying that. He was saying that there are some really bad people coming across the border. And who could dispute that?
Well, I represent the state of Texas. We have roughly 1,200 miles of border with Mexico and the Rio Grande. I've spent significant time down on the border meeting with law enforcement, meeting with Border Patrol agents, listening to the very serious law enforcement threats that they face, from murders to rapes to immigrants who are being abused by transnational global cartels.
Right.
The coyotes are vicious, hardened criminals, and I'll tell you, anyone who travels down to the Rio Grande and sees the photographs of the bodies of women and children abused and abandoned in the desert by these coyotes, by these transnational cartels, can't help but be horrified. And I think it is a good thing that we are talking about it. That the sad reality is an awful lot of politicians in Washington, both Democrats and Republicans, have no interest in actually solving the problem of illegal immigration. And
and that's what's so. The American people are begging to have this issue tackled, and yet we see it's like officials playing the opposite game. My goodness, I don't know if you heard the San Francisco sheriff Ross McReamy defending the sanctuary city status of his city. Now, we know about the shooting death of this beautiful young woman. The guy who is in jail for the crime admits that he did it. He picked up a gun, shot this poor woman while she's walking with her dad along a pier in San Francisco. This guy had been deported 5 times, had 7 felony arrests. And Senator Cruz, I hope you don't mind if I share with you what the sheriff actually said in defending the sanctuary city status of San Francisco. Listen to this.
It makes us safer. I firmly believe it makes us safer. We're a world-renowned city with a large immigrant population.
Okay.
And of that population is a population that is also here undocumented. For a law enforcement perspective, we want to build trust with that population, and our sanctuary city and other attendant laws have allowed us to do that.
Senator Cruz, words fail me, but maybe they won't for you.
Look, this is manifest of the policy of the far left that is embraced by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and much of the Washington cartel, which is that we shouldn't enforce our law, which is that rule of law doesn't matter. And, a couple of years ago when in Washington, all of Washington was united behind the so-called Gang of Eight bill. And I helped lead the fight to stop the Gang of Eight amnesty bill. I joined with my friends Jeff Sessions and a few others in stopping that bill. And yet in Washington, you had Democrats united. All of the Democrats thought it was a terrific idea not to enforce our laws and to grant amnesty to millions of people here illegally. And sadly, an awful lot of Republicans agreed with them and jumped in bed with them. And that's why people are so frustrated. Mike, I've got a new book that is out this week called A Time for Truth.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, A Time for Truth, what I do is I take the reader behind closed doors. If you've ever wondered what happens in a Republican Senate lunch, what happens when Republican leadership is breaking the promises that were made to the men and women who elected us, what this book, A Time for Truth, does is it takes you behind those closed doors, and it simply tells the truth about the bipartisan corruption in Washington that I've seen firsthand, and that's what we've got to take on if we're going to turn things around.
Senator Ted Cruz is with us here on the Mike Gallagher Show, and again, just a welcome change from bashing. The media loves this. The media loves to see one Republican bash another. The Democrats certainly love it. Here's Governor Christie, again, a very colorful guy, a very brash, outspoken New Jersey governor. Here he is on Fox News yesterday referring to you.
Donald Trump is forcing this conversation on immigration. Do you support what he said?
No, I think what he said was wrong. I think it was inappropriate. I don't think it has any place in the campaign. And I find it ironic, right, that Ted Cruz is giving lectures on Republican violence. The guy who put together a group that was sponsoring primary ads against Senator Lamar Alexander is giving us, the rest of us, lectures on Republican violence. I mean, all due respect, I don't need to be lectured by Ted Cruz.
Is it difficult, Senator Cruz, not to respond in kind to something Governor Christie said?
Well, listen, I like Chris Christie. I have repeatedly praised Chris Christie. Indeed, I've repeatedly and vocally defended Chris Christie from what I think are unfair and ridiculous attacks and charges on the whole Bridgegate thing, which I've said is water under the bridge. He can choose to say what he wants to say. I do appreciate his kind efforts to highlight that I have consistently worked hard to elect conservatives to Congress. It is interesting, his Oppo research guys got the facts wrong because I did not actually get involved in Lamar Alexander's race. But at the end of the day, if he or anyone else wants to attack their opponents, they can choose to do that. I disagree with that choice. I am going to sing Chris Christie's praises. I'm going to sing Donald Trump's praises, and I'm going to focus on the issues that matter, which is turning this country around, which is fighting to restore the Constitution, to defend our liberties, to bring back jobs and growth and opportunity, and to restore America's leadership in the world. That's what the American people want, not a bunch of self-centered politicians bickering like children in Washington.
Thank God, gosh, for that. Thank you, Senator Cruz. Philip Bump over at the Washington Post writes that the reason that you've been defending Donald Trump on this is that you're Hispanic, you're the son of immigrants yourself, so you are relatively immune to the racial overtones of the issue. Is that fair? It's classic Washington Post where it's silliness. Listen, I have been unequivocal opposing amnesty, opposing illegal immigration, leading the fight. It's interesting. Most Republican candidates for president will say they oppose amnesty. The question that I think primary voters are asking is, okay, well, when have you actually stood up and led the fight? When President Obama was pushing the Gang of Eight bill, where were you?
And, you look at most of the field, and most of the field, they were not leading the fight. They were not opposing it. And I am absolutely the son of an immigrant who came from Cuba. My father was imprisoned. He was tortured in Cuba. And he came to America in 1957. He couldn't speak English. He had $100 in his underwear. He washed dishes making 50 cents an hour. Now, he came legally. He came on a student visa. He became a U.S. citizen. That's the way it's supposed to work. We are all the children of those who risked everything for freedom. And I think it is entirely consistent to support and celebrate and embrace legal immigrants. Reagan called legal immigrants Americans by choice.
Right.
And at the same time, to support rule of law and enforcing our laws and protecting our safety and security. It's only the lies of the Washington cartel that suggest those are somehow in conflict. I'll tell you, you come down to Texas. You mentioned the Washington Post said, well, gosh, stopping illegal immigration is somehow a bad thing to Hispanics. I'll tell you, Hispanic citizens in Texas over and over again raise concerns about safety and security and illegal immigration because it's their communities that many times are paying the price.
Senator, it's funny you mentioned Cuba. I'm so intrigued by this whole. I was watching last week the announcement that there are now weekly flights from New York into Havana on JetBlue. With this sort of normalizing our relations with Cuba, lifting the travel embargo and all that. I'm so intrigued by the thought of going to a place in the world where I would love to see the country, even broadcast from there, but I'm also torn because I also know there's been this sort of pretend game that's been played that this is not a brutal dictatorship and the people of Cuba haven't been treated horrifically by their leaders.
Well, you're exactly right, Mike. This is the latest manifestation of the failures of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy, of leading from behind, where we consistently antagonize and alienate our friends and allies.
Right.
And we coddle and appease our enemies. What we're doing with Cuba is exactly the same as what the Obama administration is doing with Russia and Iran, which is weakness and strengthening evil, corrupt dictators.
Right.
When it comes to the Castros, I know this firsthand. My father was imprisoned and tortured by Batista, and my aunt, my tia Sonia, who's my father's kid sister, was there after the revolution. She fought in the counter-revolution, and Castro's goons took my aunt, threw her in prison, and tortured her. And the Castros are evil, murderous tyrants. They torture and murder their citizens. They have kept that nation as a jail, imprisoned. It's like the land that time forgot. It's still trapped in the 1950s. They are exporting terrorism throughout Latin America. They hate America. The tyrants do.
Right.
And what the Obama administration is doing is sending billions of dollars directly to the Castros, which will only prop them up, strengthen their oppression of the people, and strengthen their efforts to fund anti-American efforts. It wasn't too long ago where in the Panama Canal we stopped a ship loaded with Cuban arms headed to North Korea. And it's the same thing we're doing in Iran. In Iran, the Obama administration is allowing billions of dollars to flow into Iran. That money will go directly to terrorists. Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorists in the world. And as a result, the Obama administration will become one of the most important international financiers of terrorism because that money the Obama administration is sending to Iran will fund terrorists who will use it to murder Americans, Europeans, Israelis, our allies, and it's the Obama administration funding it. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Senator Ted Cruz, we're always grateful for the time you take with us on the campaign trail. Best of luck to you, and I appreciate you visiting with us. We'll visit again real soon.
Yeah, my friend, God bless you.
God bless you. Senator Ted Cruz on the Mike Gallagher Show.